All right, so welcome. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I am Jeff Urato. I have been a member of Bergen County or a resident of Bergen County for my entire life.
Awesome. So you rent, own, or own the house?
Own.
Own a house, okay. And how does the LGBT community come into your life?
Well, being LGBT, I it was a something I had a hard time growing up with. Being, the son of the police chief and having very political affiliations, family connections, things like that, businesses, and it was an extremely difficult thing, not only for me, but for my parents as well.
Yeah.
Um, having to come out was extremely, extremely difficult and somewhat dangerous at times.
Yeah. So how do you think if, let's say, an alternate universe, you grew up and there was an actual LGBT center that would provide services and therapy and stuff like that, or resources to those things for you, how do you think your life
I
would have
think
acted?
I think if it could have been a lot smoother, it could have been an extremely huge benefit to my parents, especially, um, being from, well, of course, my parents and me. Um, they had a very difficult time understanding what was going on, and my father, being a very old school uh, traditionalist, let's say, and a policeman, it didn't go over very well. And I think if there was a program that they could have been involved in with me to understand things a bit better, it wouldn't have taken 8 years for him to come around and be fully supportive. I think that was the probably the hardest thing that he did, and one of the things I'm most proud of him for was that he was able to then finally understand and not only not care, but be a supporter as well. And I think that could have happened much more quickly had there been a center specifically in Bergen County where he most likely would have known the people working there or the programs involved.
Exactly.
So again, especially if the police are involved with the center, how that can benefit, um, everything from sensitivity training to, I grew up in the police station. I knew what it was like, and I heard the tales told. I think that was one of the things that hurt me a lot growing up, knowing that I was the person that the other police were making fun of.
Yeah.
So I think that type of understanding and training could have benefited all of us. Um, and of course, me being involved in security all those years, I've seen horrible things happen to LGBT youth, from drugs and drug abuse to rape cases and just horrific, horrific things. Battering, relationship abuse. Um, the list goes on.
Yeah.
So many programs would have been so beneficial to, especially the younger generation growing up, having to deal with it, whereas there's no place to go. And this is Bergen County. Bergen County can afford to have an LGBT center. Okay, we're like, I believe, the third or fourth richest county in the country. So, um, you know, $24,000 a year in taxes should most definitely be able to support something. Okay. The other thing too is health research, health, and growing up during the AIDS crisis, that was our biggest fear. There was no place to turn to a doctor. So, I've had horrible experiences being scared and not knowing who to turn to when the time came. And thank God I finally did find doctors that were able to help me and make sure that I knew how to stay safe and I knew how to be careful. And till this day, thank God I found those people. Otherwise, my life would have been very different. I could have been a statistic.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that we don't have a program that can actually help that way. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you, you're pretty settled in life and secure, right?
sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think, what do you think is reality right now for people who are coming up and who aren't secure and don't have that support? right here in our county? What do you think it's like for them?
It's the same. It's got to be the same because you have to remember, especially in the areas where we live, there is there has been over the past 20, 30 years an increase in Latino families, and especially, but not just Latino families, but actual immigrants that have moved here, and they have a very different, a lot of times a very different view, a very older school view, sort of like my father did about what it was to be gay or lesbian or trans or whatever. Um, and I think these kids might need some help because these parents, a lot of times, don't understand. And it's not just them; it's a lot of the foreign communities think somewhat like my father did, and I think that's a big point that um, I don't think those kids should have to suffer the way I did,
Yeah,
uh, not knowing where to go or to turn to.
yeah,
I think that's extremely important, and any of them, not just the Latino families, that anybody, all the families, the Americans, and the ones who have been here forever who still don't get it. I think there's a lot of benefit to having a centralized spot, so to speak, so that people can turn to there when they don't know what else to do. There's a lot to be learned when a group of people who support the LGBT community work together to help others understand and offer resources like, again, mental health seems to be a huge one because regardless of what your family may think of you, it's still difficult to grow up that way and realize something's not quite right. Like you grow up knowing that I am different. How do I deal with it? And I think the sooner that you're able to get the tools to learn how to live your best life, the better off you'll be and more successful you can be and be
yeah.
a contributing member to society as opposed to getting caught up in the drug world and the nightclub world and everything else that seems to go along with a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be a huge, huge benefit.
Can I just expand on that last point, because that's literally one of the reasons why I am doing this is without support.
Mm.
um and Feathers is an amazing place and did a lot of good to a lot of people, but that shouldn't be the place where you learn how
No,
to be the
yeah,
support, you know what I mean?
place where a
So
lot of us learned a lot of things because we managed to find good people to learn
yeah,
from.
yeah,
But yeah, there were between that and New Jersey Buddies and the original, I believe it was Father Mariano who started the program. He was the one who
yeah,
always gave me my, the advice that I needed.
yeah,
Um, and you don't want to hear things from your friends. Again, those opinions a lot of times aren't always true.
yeah.
So yeah, there was a place. A nightclub is one thing to learn stuff, but it's
Not
there's
always the right
professionals.
stuff to learn.
Right. It's not always the right side, right? There's always good lessons. Listen, everything is an education, but
Yeah,
um, being drunk and talking about it until 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes isn't really the best idea.
yeah,
And as I love the bar, I've worked there for a long time. The owners are wonderful people
mhm,
and they try to do good for the community always.
yeah,
And I really, I'm glad I'm glad it's there because it is a safe space when there isn't one right now. But
exactly.
there should be another safe space. There shouldn't just be a club. There
Yeah,
should be a safe space as well that can give you resources like how difficult it is to find a doctor who is not only gay friendly but understands the things like PrEP and how to protect yourself and things that matter um to gays and lesbians and straights and transgender, don't even get me started, the abuse that they receive, and I've seen it.
yeah,
um I mean, I've had bottles thrown at me and I've had people, but it's a little different. When I'm working security, I'm going to hit you back. These people a lot of times don't have a place to go that is safe. 110 pounds, young, 21-year-old drag queen performer is, out in public somewhere, and people just jump them. I mean, it's crazy. It's just the stuff that you see,
yeah,
and I've seen just horrible things done to the trans community that doesn't, this should not happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if it's just going from your one performance back home or to the performance, and they're attacked on the way.
Yeah.
There should be education. There should be, um, again, a group that is centralized that allows true help to people that are going through something that is very difficult. I would not wish this. I would not wish my growing up and coming out story on anybody. Um, it was rough.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going to a psychiatrist or being sent to one by my mother, and the doctor wanted to give me shock therapy to cure me. And thank God I was educated. And I told him, I was like, it hasn't been on the list of psychiatric disorders since 1977, I believe. I said, and you want to give me shock treatment to cure me? I almost jumped over I almost jumped over the desk, okay, that day. And I said to my mother, thank God I had a strong head, because I could have been a true victim um, of basically abuse. And he was a doctor in Teaneck.
Hmm.
Doctor in Teaneck, a licensed psychiatrist, wanted to give shock therapy.
Yeah.
And he told me he was going to save me from dying of the AIDS, was his exact words, and to be able to live a normal life.
Wow.
I was 18,
Wow.
18. All right. So that was 1988. Imagine. So there's some sick people in this world. And thank God I knew better. And that, my father's tough upbringing really did give me a large mouth. And, let's put it that way, talking back. So yeah, I think stories like that still can happen very easily.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think that Bergen County, of all places, with the amount of people that we have within Bergen County, it's so densely populated. Again, it's extremely densely populated and extremely wealthy. Why we don't have a center where people can go when there is a real problem that's centralized is just sad.
Yeah.
We have programs for everything else. We have a $1 million dog kennel for the dogs. We have an animal shelter that runs like a dream, thank God. That also spends a lot of money too, but there are children and people that can't get the help that they need right here in Bergen County.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but people have to come first. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to take money away from something else, but that should be a priority.
I think we can do both.
I
I
believe,
think we can do
I
both.
believe we can. Please.
So
Otherwise,
what I was trying to highlight is that if, like you were alluding to earlier, is that if we had a center and we were able to stop and offer a place for kids to go to and parents to learn and to understand and stop the progression of, not that Feathers is bad, I love Feathers, clearly, but the only place to go to, and then the potential of addictions becoming your life, depression and all that kind of stuff going on, to give another way to exist, and to see representations of people who are living their best lives, how important that is. But one other question I want to ask you is, being so closely with the police department, um, and this is, I work with sexual assault survivors, and understanding how there's such a difference from town to town to town on the treatment of people, by the police department. So if you're like, some towns are going to be very friendly and they're going to be very progressive. You go to another town, and it's like, whoa, we're in 1950s or something.
yeah,
So,
yeah. What did you
what
do?
do
In
you
other
think
words,
of that?
I think it's horrific. I think there needs to be I mean, each department is run. Obviously, there's civil service towns, and there's what they call police chief towns and things like that. So, but I think there should be a centralized uh, education system that the police know how to handle it. Not every gay person you deal with is going to be you know, Joe Butch Jock, okay? There's going to be this extreme, this human sexuality thing runs the gamut. And some people are more feminine, some people are not. And there always seems to be a kind of a strange um, teasing almost from some of the police that I've known over the years. Now, I can't say any of them are in office anymore or even on the job anymore. Um, Most of the ones I know today are extremely, extremely good uh, professional people that don't care.
Yeah.
Okay, great, great, great policemen that literally will put down their line life for you if need be. And some of my best friends, period,
Yeah.
are part of Bergen County's police force. And but I don't know if they all have the same training. You
Yeah.
know, being friends with me and making me, I was always the one that made people talk about it. That there was no difference. That you could be a police officer or something, and still be gay, and it wasn't going to make a difference. It's not. It's not who you are. It's just part of you. It doesn't make you a man or not.
Yeah.
And there's so many crazy things in between that people get just misconstrued. And you're there to serve first. One of the most important things my father ever taught me was that if anybody needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter where they're from, what color they are, whatever. None of that matters. Their life in being in danger or peril or in turmoil matters. And again, it shouldn't. No one should be afraid to go to the police. Okay,
Yeah.
that you should be able to feel comfortable and walk into any police station, regardless of who you are, and say, "Please help me." And there should be someone there to help you immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Again, that's it. There's
Yeah.
no other question for it. So if there needs to be a place to train them, that they can get better education to understand. Um, me, I'm not always all for sensitivity training, but if you don't get it, you don't get it.
Yeah.
So yes, there are times that is needed. If you don't get it, then yes, you have to be taught.
Yeah. And then that's what I was getting to, because I mean, I know some of the police department myself, and like you said, they're amazing, and I really am proud of Bergen County's police and the detective departments. Just
Have
amazing
really
stuff.
I believe New Jersey's still one of the top in all of the country.
Yeah, and it
And
shows, and it shows.
my
But
40, my father was for 44 years
yeah,
on the job. And even then, no matter who it was, whether they needed help, they were always there.
but like you said, there's no. Well, I mean, they're trying to change, but there's no like regular
There's no
sensitivity
continuity.
training.
There's no right. There's not
Yeah,
again, you end up in a small town or you end up in an area that's uh, it's funny. It never makes sense. You never know when you're going to run into a problem
yeah,
with someone that doesn't agree.
exactly.
Okay. And, you're supposed to be trained that no personal belief should ever come in between your job and you. Sadly, that doesn't always happen. So if there could be a centralized learning system or a program that would help, by all means, bring it on. Because I've heard horror stories,
Yeah,
um, real horror stories, and it shouldn't exist. Not in Bergen County.
yeah. Right. Thank you. That's really spot on. So, is there anything else you want to bring up? This is your time.
Well, no, I just like what we spoke about before, and how I feel about this is that me. I'm not one to put my name on a lot.
Yeah.
I'm still a very private person. I still like to keep my business to myself. What I am and how I live are nobody's business but my own. Um, but there comes a time, my father had always said, you have to do the right thing. And he was infamous for saying that over and over again, always do the right thing. So even though I was apprehensive to speak at least publicly about this, I thought of what it was like to grow up for me and how hard it was on my parents to understand. And most importantly, now thank God I never got involved in drugs and I never got involved. I was never a drinker or anything like that. but I could have easily been. And I think that a center would have truly been able to help them grasp what it meant to have an LGBT child, and how it could have been made easier for them to understand, grow, and make the best of it. Because we don't get choices in this.
Yeah.
So I figured if there is someone that needs to be told about what it's like to grow up rough and go through an 8-year period where you were really scared, then they could talk to me. And if that experience helps anyone uh, avoid going through, excuse me, avoid going through what I went through, then by all means, put my name on it.
Awesome.
You
Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap it up, and just, do you feel comfortable with what you talked about, and do you give
Absolutely,
consent
yeah,
to share?
absolutely,
Right. So
absolutely.
what would
I,
happen is,
I know you for a long time.
yeah, yeah.
Well, we went to the same high school. You know what that was like.
Yes, I do.
That is another thing too. Schools, the schools and their training. Hackensack High School was an absolute disgusting nightmare when it came to certain things like that.
Oh yeah.
And I had teachers say things to me that really should never have been said to any student. I think teachers and there could have saved. Remember, I left Hackensack and I finished high school in another district. Um, that's how bad it got at that point. So that should also be made, that could be a program that schools could be involved in as well.
Yeah.
And we're really failing our students if we don't offer them the protections they deserve.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, so part of why I'm doing this is to give an accurate depiction of what is available and what is not. So
Right.
a lot of us are left with these memories and we don't know. So when people talk about Bergen County, the mention is, there's nothing here. And the truth is, there is lots of stuff here for LGBT people, and there's lots of stuff going on. Like Hackensack has a GSA.
Centralized and no one knows where to go get it.
Yeah, and that's the point. It's like, you're talking, and Hackensack High School has a GSA, and they're pretty good. I mean, that board
Okay.
member was pretty disgusting what she was saying and stuff, but that passed. We got
Well,
we're
if you
teaching
screwed
about
yourself up, you got booted. Yeah.
yeah, embarrassing, but but the point is, there is GSAs, and that's
Right.
not being publicized. And there's lots of schools that have GSA, gay straight alliances, that are supporting them.
The
And
other thing, I mean, do you remember what it was like? Again, remember when we would go and even get tested? You were kind of afraid to go into the building. People would see. What are they going to say? All of these things. High school. Are you kidding? High
yeah,
school, we were petrified.
yeah,
Okay. And, you know, one of the reasons I had to leave was simply because I couldn't deal with all that I was thinking, and going through that emotional upheaval.
yeah,
And, you know, I think it's so important to have a centralized group. If I'd have seen something where to go to, uh, I think I could have avoided a lot of anxiety over the years, you
yeah.
know. So centralizing it, having a communal group, bringing all of the groups that work separately and privately in Bergen County together,
Yeah,
um, referrals. At the end, that makes perfect sense. Okay, there should be one big group that you can go to if you feel you need any help whatsoever.
exactly.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be just LGBT. Anybody can go, but it still
Yeah,
has to have the
a
same type of
center,
resources. Right.
a resource
Listen,
center. So there
right,
would be resources for
right,
everyone. And then,
right.
and that's the one of the things that people push back on. They're like, well, we can just have a center. And I was like, well, it's important to have representation. It's
There
important to have a
must be
space.
representation because again, this is the problem with just a center itself and not
Yeah,
being specifically marketed toward LGBT is that everything in the world is marketed to everyone else. There's no
yes,
fear of walking into a building that someone's going to think you're different. Okay. And you have to remember, especially kids that are in trouble don't want to be seen in those places. Okay. They're afraid to go there. They're afraid that someone's going to judge them. So for everyone from guidance counselors to to your own doctor half the time you're afraid to talk to about certain things like that, especially at that age.
Yeah.
And there was a center where they could feel safe and knew they wouldn't be judged, I would have been the first person there at, 17, 18. I walked right through those doors,
Yeah.
especially after what happened to me. So yeah, I think I think it's a very big, important thing that should be discussed, and certainly one we can afford.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you, Anthony.
time and for your candor. I really appreciate this. And
It's my
let's pray.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Let's keep our fingers crossed and pray.
Let me stop the video.